Everyone, we are going to talk about something that I think is very much overlooked when you're listening to any content about efficiency in your business, streamlining your business. What do you usually hear? You hear about setting up automations, you hear about all types of AI things to streamline things. And while those have their place, I want to scale it back a bit today for you and talk about when streamlining means actually removing automations. So we're gonna talk about something. What if I told you, I'm looking at my computer here because I have some numbers and statistics that I want to share with you guys. So sometimes the best way to streamline your business, like if you're feeling overwhelmed by what's going on, a good thing to do is look at your business, and a lot of times removing certain automations can be what is needed to simplify, not adding in more automations. So I'm going to talk about I'm going to give you two specific examples, like two case studies of clients that we've worked with where we had to step in and do that, how we had to remove some automations because they were taking on a life of their own. All right, so the first example of one, and this is probably a very common one if you are in the online space at all where you send out newsletters or email marketing. So here's the case study or an example of a client that we've worked with and where automation was just wrecking things instead of streamlining things. So I had a client, it was an e-commerce brand, and they had built 3 overlapping welcome email sequences. So they had one set up for newsletter signups. They had one set up for first-time purchasers, like of any of their products that they sold. And then they had an email sequence or a welcome email sequence for cart abandoners. So those are common, right? You may have some of those set up for yourself. But here is where the problem was happening is every new subscriber got all 3 of these emails in the first week. So obviously what was happening is their engagement with their newsletters totally tanked. Their unsubscribe rates spiked, and it was not a very good, clear customer experience. Customer confusion was kind of off the charts. So what we did in analyzing what was going good and what was going wrong with their email marketing is we looked at those automations, we paused 2 of them, and we kept only a single one automation, well-timed welcome email. And then what we did is we didn't forget about we paused the other automations, but we switched to a manual check-in to see if their customers didn't open within 48 hours, then we had another sequence set up. But the key here is they had too many automatic things set up. And sometimes that happens with automations when you're a small business and then you start to grow. So you may have set up certain things right at the beginning, and then you get busier, your team grows, your customer base grows, and then you add on an automation here, you add on an automation there, and before you know it, you lose track of what you have automated, and it kind of takes on a life of its own. So that is something that is very real, and I see that happen a lot in businesses. So email is one example. The second example is of inventory. So if you're a small business, I'm sure you've heard of Zapier. There's another client that we had, as an example, was a Shopify retailer. So what they had set up, which is kind of manually built into Shopify, they had a system set up when they first started. So here's the key. A lot of people set up these systems when you first begin, and then you kind of forget about them as you get busier. So that's what happened to this online retailer for a Shopify shop. So when they had the Zap set up so that whenever any product, like their inventory, dipped below 10 units, it triggered a purchase. So the Zap triggered a purchase to order from their supplier. Sounds good, right? But the problem with this is all of a sudden they were discovering they spent over $15,000 on stock that they couldn't move, and it was obviously tying up their cash and warehouse space. So this one simple automation, because it was not tweaked and checked in on, had really bad financial consequences for them. So what we did, first thing we did is we paused the always on reorders app. Obviously that was good, like I said at the beginning, when they were a small business, but as they got bigger, it just morphed and took off in a way that was not sustainable for them. So that was the first thing. The second thing that we did was we introduced a weekly low stock report review. Here's the key here, manually. So to manually go in and just double check and approve these purchase orders based on sales velocity. So it's not something that's just was automatically being done behind the scenes anymore, because that was the way that one was set up was ruining their business. And then the third thing we did with that company is we refined reorder points, and we did it based on their top sellers, their top 20%. That's what we refined. We still had automation built into it, but it was much more structured. And then that solved all of the overstock issues eventually. So what happened in 2 months? So the overstock dropped by 40% in 2 months. The inventory, like their turnover rate, improved by 25%. And then it freed up $12,000 for them in working capital so that they could reinvest in their business, or, reinvest it in marketing or other things like product launches. And so that's just 2 examples of how sometimes assessing what you have automated already and removing an automation. So here's the key home, a mini checklist I'm going to give to you guys. Before you build another Zap or another flow or another automation, ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, does this automation serve one clear purpose? Number 2, are there any steps that are overlapping or redundant? This happens a lot. This is a key one here, that a lot of automations overlap each other, or they do some of the same things. So you want to get rid of that, and you want to just analyze, make sure, are any steps overlapping or redundant? Number 3, the final one, is when was the last time you audited their performance? So the particular Zap or automation or flow that you've got set up, when was the last time you personally audited its performance? So if this Shopify shop would have done that, it was good, like I said, when they set up, but if they would have done just that number 3, if they would have went in and audited it months earlier, they could have stopped all that extra stock that they were getting and extra money they were having to pay out, which worked at the beginning but didn't work as they were growing. So if the answer to any of those 3 questions that we just went over is no, or I don't know, consider turning that automation off for now and recalibrating. So have you ever, here's my question for you after this mini training here, have you ever had an automation go wild? If you have, drop your story in the comments or DM me, because this is something that we do with businesses. We hop in and we can do audits on all sorts of things, but automation audits are a big thing that we love to do. Hop in, look at your business, and figure out where the automation is broken, if we need to cut back on some automations, or if we need to implement some new automations. So thanks for tuning in for today's little mini lesson on streamlining your systems, and we will see you next time.